Good evening. Today is Tuesday, May 17th, and the Salem-Keizer School District Budget Committee meeting is called to order. I will ask our Budget Committee Secretary to take attendance of our Budget Committee.
Thank you. When I say your name, please say here. Osvaldo Avila.
Here.
Jacqueline Bechtel. Not here yet. Danielle Bethel. Ashley Carson Cottingham.
Here.
Satya Chandragiri. Barbara Guillo.
Here.
Karina Guzman Ortiz.
Here.
Lisa Harnish.
Here.
Levy Herrera Lopez.
Here.
Marty Hyen. Maria Hinojos Pressy.
Here.
Nancy McMorris Audix. Oni Marchbanks.
Here.
And Laura Million.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Budget Committee Secretary. Marty Hine will be traveling this day and may be out of cell range, unable to come to the meeting. She may join us if she's able to. And Nancy McMorris Adix will not be in attendance due to schedule conflict. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Welcome, bienvenidos, to the Salem-Keizer School Budget Committee meeting. At all times, whether we meet in person or virtual, as we are tonight, we strive to be inclusive, respectful, and welcoming to our students, staff, educators, administrators, budget committee members, and all community members. We welcome people of all genders, people of African descent, Black, African American, Asian descent, Arab descent, European descent, those who identify as Hispanic, Latinx, people indigenous to this land, and people of mixed and multiple descents. Languages spoken in our communities are welcome: Spanish, English, indigenous languages, sign language, Chuukese, Somali, Russian, Chinese, Vietnamese, and many more. People with disabilities, visible or invisible, people of all religions, believers in all faiths or creeds, gay, lesbian, bisexual, heterosexual, pansexual, transgender, queer, two-spirit, or others for whom none of the labels fit. Survivors, your emotions, joy, bliss, grief, rage, indignation, contentment, disappointment. Your families, genetic and otherwise. Our veterans who proudly served and are currently serving our country. Our elders, those here in this room, in our lives, and those who have passed away. People impacted or displaced by the war in Ukraine and other violent conflicts. Yes, and finally, we'd like to welcome the ancestors who lived in this land where we live and work. Welcome the spirits of the Santiam, Kaiapua, Siletz, and Grand Ron, the natives who lived in this area before the Europeans came. Welcome, bienvenidos. So now we're going to get ready for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Perry for the review of the 2022-23 budget, proposed budget, and response on committee questions. Superintendent Perry.
Right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair Marchbanks and members of the Budget Committee. Here's how I'll work through the budget document and some of the questions tonight. If you have a hard copy and you need to be looking at your hard copy, I'd say get it out now. If you're a visual learner, or if you're an online learner and can navigate the budget online, I'm going to show the online version when I share my screen. So everything I point to in the budget book, you'll see on my screen and you'll see it's highlighted. If I could have thought how to save my highlights so you could see that as well, I think that would have been a great idea, but I couldn't figure that out last minute. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And then I've organized the questions and I've oriented them through to the budget book. A lot of the questions were about programs, so I'll try to weave in some of those answers, those programmatic things, as I point to where it is in the budget book. When I get through the end, you can circle back around and ask me questions. Or we can move on to describing public comment, and then you as a committee can begin deliberating on the things you want to talk about as a committee, because that's your time. And then at the end, I'll walk us through what happens next. So first of all, I got a couple, I'm not going to scroll. I got to go back to my let me get up here a little bit. Somebody brought up questions about the budget, inflation. And when I put a number, and I'm going to tell you page 34, it's 34 in the online version. It's 33 if you have a hard copy. They're always one page number off. And I'll try to say both of them each time. So there was, I went too quickly on my notes here. 25 is where I want to start. 25 in the hard copy, 26 in the online version. So a question came up, and it was from Budget Committee member Million around inflation. And she had multiple questions, knowing what has happened with inflation over this last few months. And as we're preparing the online document, we were doing this like the middle to end of January, beginning of February. So let me tell you where there's room built in for the inflation they're seeing and where we should be worrying or watching. So the first of all, in your budget book, in yellow highlights there, you see I've got materials and services. That's basically the stuff and things that we give to schools, pencils, paper, that sort of stuff. So 2% in secondary, 3% in elementary. The cost allocations, of course, are based on about 39,000 students as we think about how many students are out in that school. Then in the red, I added some additional notes. 5% was built in on contingencies. And then the fuel for buses is going to be a big thing we'll need to watch. It is budgeted in 2550 student transportation services in the 410s consumable supplies and materials. And when we built the budget within that object code, we always have room for fluctuation because we don't know what the fuel prices will be. And we have ways to store quite a bit of fuel. So we try to buy when it's low, use, and then not buy when it's high. Never when we estimated this budget did we estimate that we would have fuel prices what they are today. So that's an area in the budget in one line item that may come in higher than the way we've budgeted. But if we zoom up and know that what you're approving is an amount of appropriation, there'll be room other places to absorb some of those inflationary costs by underspending in other areas. Or if we get to a place that we have huge inflation, you have to think about the supply chain, what will fuel impact other costs of services. If we have lots of inflation, then we can use from the contingency. And if we exceed what you've approved and the board has adopted, we come back to the board with a supplemental budget process. So that's kind of how that inflation is figured in. Do I think we have estimated low in some areas? I absolutely do, because inflation wasn't what it was when we were developing the budget. So an important thing to think about, and a risk in the system right now. The thing that's constant is it doesn't matter what inflation is, unless the legislature goes back into session, our revenue is what it is. So that state school fund revenue is set already in law. And so if we see huge inflationary costs and no special session, the revenue is what it is. Very worst case scenario would be reduction in programs. I don't see that. We've got strong contingency built into this. We've got room in some other areas, but it's just important to think about. And it's going to be equally as important as we go into next year's budget cycle. So we're going to have to really watch that. The other thing that, well, let me go a step further. So if you go to, one more on this page, sorry. A question came up about the Oregon paid family medical leave insurance. That does go into effect in January of 2023. We have the amount built into the budget that will be the district portion of the Oregon paid family medical leave. So we have budgeted for that. Okay, so next page is on 34 in the paper version, 35. 33 in the paper version, 34 in the online version. A question came up about this 5,000 category. The question was, what is in this category and why would we call it other uses? So this is, our coding comes from Oregon Department of Education, and 5,000 other uses can be a variety of things. And it looks like that question was focused on the asset replacement fund. And so I'm going to move you right now to page 127 to show you exactly where some of those other things are in this proposed budget related to asset replacement, because the next question came up around asset replacement. Okay, and if I am going too fast, somebody, Oni, I can see you on my screen. I can't see everyone. Wave at me if I'm going too fast, or if you see people. Ooh, that is blurry. There we go. Okay, Fund 122 is our asset replacement fund. And you see that 5,000 number in there? That helps you see where that requirement is. Those are the other things. I don't know why they call it other, and we talked about it today and wondered if we could come up with some better names for that. So here's your asset replacement. And the question came around, what exactly is moved out of the Gen Fund into asset replacement? So the first one is curriculum. That's that $10 million in curriculum. The next one is the transportation. And we talked about the transportation for the buses and the transportation new facility. So that's the transportation. The next one is equipment and furniture for $2 million, technology for $2 million, and additional dollars for vehicles. And within that 5,200, $2 million, that's that equity asset replacement fund. So that's where those came to be. And on the curriculum, the question came up about how is curriculum selected? Much longer answer, but I'm going to give you the short version embedded in this. If it's a full adoption, there's a full adoption process that is a public process, ends with the board. Within the 10 million, there's likely to be a couple full adoptions. If it's supplemental material, then it's teacher selected with administrative oversight. So an example of supplementary material is some of the curriculum for the dual language expansion. The adopted curriculum is our Ready Gen reading curriculum. We have materials in Spanish and Ready Gen, but supplementing that is some phonics-based curriculum that is specific, especially for our younger grades in Spanish. That is selected with a team of district people and teachers because it's considered supplemental material. If anyone wants the policy, we have policy, and ODE has a full set of rules around full adoptions that's on their website. All right, so the next place I'm going to go to is I'm going to take you all the way to the large grants fund because this has to do with inflation still. But I'd like you to go to page 124 in the online version. So this is another place that there could be some worry about inflation and food costs. But a couple things to remember. Our food service fund is funded in Fund 200 in that large grant funds. This fund, Fund 220, takes care of all the revenue and all the expenditures for our food service programs for students. And you can see this is the resources or the revenue for that fund. And you can see where we get our dollars. So we get it from the state school breakfast program. The state school fund had a special provision for some additional free meals. The federal school lunch program, big amount there, and $13 million. And then commodities that we get from USDA. So this is where we get the dollars. And the goal would be that this self-sustaining fund, and if costs go up for food, that somehow that revenue through those programs comes up as well. It does have to be a self-sustaining program, but also notice that there's a beginning fund balance in this fund of $6.5 million. Now that seems like a lot, but we also use this fund for replacement of equipment, for, if a refrigerator goes out, all of that. But again, there's some room for inflation in there. But again, something we should keep an eye on. Okay, so the next question, I'm not going to tie you directly to anything in the budget book on this one, but there's been a question about class size. And we can go into more detail, but a couple places where we have done some class size reductions. So in ESSER, we have 54 elementary positions funded in ESSER. And that has kept our class sizes lower as kids return from the pandemic. Now, if you're a teacher sitting with 30 right now, you're going to look at me and say she is not telling you the truth, because we do have some classrooms of 30. But a ton of our classrooms are under 22. There's a group that's 22 to 25 because we've really allocated dollars from ESSER. So that's one place where we've intentionally lowered class size. And those are all in the budget for next year. What happens sometimes, though, is because of all the idiosyncrasies of how schools are staffed and the numbers of students in school, you end up at times with these weird bubbles. So you'll have some classrooms of 30, but just adding one more staff to that school takes away from another school. So it's this big puzzle piece. And some of our schools where we have dual language or the biliteracy strand in them will have a larger group maybe in either the English only class or the biliteracy or the transitional biliteracy class that just adds some intricacies in the system. So I'm going to take Director Carson Cottingham since I see your hand here.
Thank you, Superintendent Perry. I just wondered if you could give us a sense of how many you would estimate are 30 or more in a classroom for elementary.
Yeah, I can. And I've got either Assistant Superintendent Cobb or Director of Strategic Initiatives, Dr. West, on looking at the document probably. So there, I'm going to ask them to answer the question so they can specifically give you that answer. They might not have thought that they were going to come on so soon.
I'm happy to. I have the information right in front of me. Right now, we have 2% of classrooms that are over 30. We have 17% class, and that's 5 classrooms right now that are over 30. We have 43 classrooms, 17% of our classrooms that right now are at 25 to 29 students, and 81% of our classrooms, that is 199 classrooms that are at 24 or below.
Yeah. And can I ask a follow-up question of you? Those are the elementary numbers, and we don't have it broken out the same way for secondary, but the follow-up question is that current or next year?
This is 21. This is current.
Okay. How does that shift for next year?
For next year, we're going to have 3 classrooms, about 1. And this is all projected numbers. So these are students that we are just moving forward. And so these numbers may change as students move in and out of schools or move back into schools from EDGE. We have 3 classrooms right now projected at 30 and above. That's 3 classrooms, 1%. Then we have 34% of classrooms, 25 to 29 students. That's 77 classrooms. And we have 65% of classrooms, 24 or below, and that is 149 total classrooms.
And how the staffing works is we watch those numbers starting pretty quickly, about every week to 2 weeks. And then when we get to the closer to the school, it's definitely once a week. The elementary right now has some what we call unallocated FTE. So they have given out as much as they think for this moment. As we watch the numbers rise, we reallocate FTE, or we allocate out FTE. If they rise ahead of what we have in unallocated, then we have reserve FTE, and we have 20 FTE in reserve. And the worst case scenario is if the numbers shift, like from one school to another school, and we have to shift a person. And every now and then that happens because we think a school is going to have a certain enrollment and the enrollment doesn't come true. So you'll sit with a class of 12 or 15 and you'll think, okay, we've got this class over here. So we try to do our best with the projection, and then we reallocate based on it. And we always save a little bit of unallocated back for this reason, because we know it's not an exact science. One of the things we've really been watching is we have some schools that have really dropped in enrollment. So schools that were in neighborhoods that traditionally the school was 400 or 450 are now in neighborhoods where the school is like 275 kids. So we're watching that trend as well. Okay, Barbara.
Just one thing that I want to clarify. The numbers I gave you are the numbers on primary, because that is where we have invested most of those 54 additional teachers. We have some numbers for projections for the upper grades that I'm happy to share if that's needed.
Oh, I'm sorry. How about this? We will follow up with the full chart for you, because I thought you were doing all elementary. Sorry about that.
Yeah, primary.
Okay. We'll follow up with the chart in writing. Okay, Barbara.
2 questions. One, do you want us to ask questions as you go, or do you want us to leave that for writing questions later at the end?
It is better if I can go, but this one topic, we've gotten through the whole topic nicely. So ask as we go. And if I want to keep going, I'll say, can you hold that? How about that?
I will hold back because mine is just kind of curious more than anything. So I'll write.
Yeah, if it's a curious question, that I would love that. So a couple other places, though, with our SIA strategies, they don't go directly to a self-contained classroom always. meaning like a first grade classroom, but we do have some of the strategies that help class size. So like fifth grade reading strategy, we have literacy and licensed teachers that help and co-teach, just like we do in some places at middle school. So some of those SIA strategies aren't a direct new classroom teachers, but support kids in smaller learning environments for specialized subjects. And then the last thing is, if you're curious about what it costs to lower class size, if you take just one student to lower class size by one, and this is just a calculation of a formula, but one student K through 5, it costs about $2.9 million for one student. For one student K-12, it's approximately $5.3 million to reduce by one student K-12. So just keep that in mind as you think about class size, and partly the reason why with the SIA we targeted strategies to do some co-teaching in smaller groups for certain places. Okay, next thing is switching away from class size is there was a question about square footage, and Nancy's not here, but she remembers one of the promises we made to our custodial staff is that when we added square footage for the bond, we would add custodial staff. So if you looked on page 85, so I just want to show you where things are budgeted, which is probably 86 in the budget book. This is the operation of the and maintenance of the plant services. So you can see over time the costs of classified employees and how those have risen. But even from last year under 112 custodial, it says classified, but this is where our custodians are budgeted. We're up over 20 FTE. So in 2016-17, before the bond was passed, our square footage per custodian was about 33,000 square feet per custodian. And by the way, think how many steps they take today. Our custodians, every day, our custodians are awesome. In 2020-21, so this school year, they're at 30,000 square feet per custodian. So we've dropped by 3,000 square feet per custodian. That doesn't give you the amount for next year because we're still in construction and we don't have all the square footage calculations done. But remember, we've added additional custodians in this budget from 2021 to 20 for next year in the budget. So know that that's there, and the square footage has actually gone down. The next question was around tutoring and after school and learning loss. So you won't be able to see this directly in the budget because these aren't as spelled out for you in the budget book. But a couple of places. We have about $3.5 million in ESSER. And these are funding some things like the Croc Center's Rebound After School Activities, United Way Enrichment Academy, Saturday School, Middle School Before and After School programs, just as a few examples. Also, we have about $4.1 million in SIA, and it's elementary after school reading supports, middle school before and after school enrichment activities, Native Education Summer School. We do some matching with the ODE Summer Funds Grant. And then the last place will be the Summer Learning Grant. And we have about $7 million. It will be in the large grants budget. And that's funding, 100 summer school activities for kids between some title programming for reading and math support to enrichment type academies to credit recovery for our high school students, just a wide variety, lots of CTE things as well. And again, that not quite related to the budget, but when we get to the summer programs, I could give you a whole list of all that we're doing. So the next question that came up was around services for students who need placements outside of school settings. I don't love thinking about it that way, but we do have some kids with really intense therapy needs that do need placements that are smaller environments, more mental health supports. And let me show you where we fund those. They're in a variety of places. No idea why things are moving slow here on my end with the budget book. So you can't see this yet. It'll come clear soon. But page 61 in the budget book, 60 if you have a hard copy. I don't know exactly what to do to let this clear up.
Superintendent Perry.
Yes.
Well, that's while you're waiting on that. Laura Millian has a question. If you can address.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. I can't see your hand.
And I can wait until afterwards. It's around the student-teacher ratio, and it's just more of a clarification. So I'll wait till the end. Christy, go ahead and continue.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching the hands too, because I only can see about 5 people on my screen. If you're in your budget book, if you're calling it up on your computer, can you see it? But mine is blurry, right?
I see mine.
Okay. Well, sorry about my blurriness there. So this is the page in the budget book that is restricted programs. And we have a program called our Behavior Intervention Center. And in that Behavior Intervention Center, we have mental health supports through a social worker. We have special education teachers. And these are our programs for students with disabilities who really need emotional and behavioral support. The goal is get them into BIC, help them learn to navigate school, and then get them back to school. A little bit like a day treatment center. We try to have a shorter stay, isn't always the case. And then we also have an emotional growth center at Roberts as well. That we have out of school into different locations placements. If we had a student that wanted or needed a day treatment or residential program, which we do now and then, they're budgeted in the special education gen fund and IDEA. And if we go over, again, because it's the IEP team that decides placement for kids. If we go over our budget, then we have to find another place or come back for another appropriation. And again, the contingency would be the place for that. What we really need in our community and in our district, and something that's high on my mind, is maybe an additional setting that is a lot like BIC. And because it's, we just have kids that were dysregulated anyway, that have come back from the pandemic with needs. And it's the smaller environment that's the key. And remember, last year we added middle school alternative school. So we have about 75 kids at that alternative school, not students necessarily on an IEP, but just kids that need an additional smaller learning environment. Okay, I'm going to, after all that, it finally clears up. Look at that. I'm going to go on.
Dr. Fatia has a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Marchbanks and Superintendent Perry. So thank you for clarifying that if it exceeds our capacity. Is there any way to connect with the local coordinated care organization or CCO and kind of find a way to braid the funds? Because each of these children carries some kind of health insurance, I suppose, in our state. Thereby, we can get them a little bit more stable care if and when, because it's not just like one time we will need, because sometimes they will need on and off or ongoing basis, or having that kind of a little bit more finite relationship. So it gives us an opportunity.
Yeah, one thing, yes, or kind of. The school district is responsible for education. So in let's say there's a residential placement where a student has to go into a resident. We don't have any close, but if a student did and we pay for it, we pay for the education part of it. The insurance gets billed for the medical treatment, the mental health treatment part. So it might be a smaller cost to us in that way, but that's kind of how the system works because we're responsible for free and appropriate education. But again, a lot of those mental health partnerships that we have in our schools right now, that's exactly what we've done because we brought them into the school environment. And I know you're talking about something different, but the best way to think about it would be to think about how do mental health partners, especially partners who can work with real kids who really need intense therapy in a small school environment. They wouldn't be coming into a large comprehensive school for this sort of intense therapy. So yes, kind of, but we clearly remain responsible for the free and appropriate education part of it. All right.
Levy has a question.
Levy has a question.
Yeah, just to follow up on page 60, does this also reflect the supports that the district would give to charter schools or students of charter schools who might need an IEP or a 504, things like that?
Yep. So 2 ways one, yes, and. So charter schools are funded in the large grants fund. So there's a special section there for charter schools, but we keep the responsibility for, I call it the responsibility for FAPE around special education. So special education teachers that serve a charter school would not be in 1220 restrictive. They would be in one page down, this 1250 least restrictive programs for students with disabilities, because the restrictive programs are more of our self-contained programs, and we don't have any of those in a charter school. But we are responsible for students with learning disabilities that need an IEP and need specially designed instruction in the charter school, and they're funded here. If a student needs a more restrictive placement and they are in a charter school, because they are our students, the IEP team meets and they would no longer attend the charter school. They would need to attend wherever the program was that met their needs. But that was an IEP team decision. Did that make sense, Levy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question came up about the FTE for instructional coaches for middle school, and the question was, where will they be placed? The 2 additional coaches will be placed at Claggett Creek and Stevens, and that provides an additional coach for that restorative practice work, Envoy, classroom management, at Claggett Creek, Stevens, Waldo, and Houck. So Waldo and Houck already had those similar positions, but Claggett Creek and Stevens will be where this is added. All right. The next area I wanted to show you is related to school counselors. And it is on, let's hope that it just goes. Look at that. So first of all, this is the wrong page, but this is the social workers page, and we separated it out this year to have, it was all under attendance services. So the 2113 social workers are there. Between the Gen Fund and the SIA, we have social workers assigned to every high school, every middle school that are assigned to their campus. So that has been a really nice boost for us. And then the question was around the school counselors, and did that take the ratio of school counselor to student down. And what it did with the addition of 2 is kept it, because we had really worked hard to get the ratio down. It's still not enough in every place, but our ratios are, we have a low of 237 at elementary. Elementary is an average of 1 to 374. Middle is an average of 1 to 338, and high school is 1 to 333. But at high school, we have a couple high schools like McKay is down to 287 per one. So they've added counseling support there. So not every high school has the same amount of counselors. The one counselor was added to McNary because their enrollment's going up. So we wanted to keep them under 400. We're trying to keep the ratio under 400. You could add plenty more everywhere. It's just, again, within the big budget, where do you want to, how do we add? One thing that's come up a lot is there's a lot of interest in what happened to $1 million from the SRO contract, and can our mental health supports and social emotional learning supported in this budget to that level. So what I'll tell you is at the smallest level possible, just the straight, the behavior specialist realignment, of course, isn't an ad, but school counselors, the school psychologist, and then those instructional support assistants that were going to be added to middle schools, and then the 400,000 that was added to North and McKay for mental health supports. That equals $1.4 million right there of additional adds to this budget to support mental health. And again, is it enough? Could we add more? Of course we could. And so this item right here, you'll see on page 69, the total social worker services, it's up over $400,000. So that's one place, that's that McKay and North project right there. There's some contracted service, there's an additional staff member in there for those programs. So $1.4 million in the clearest, straightest sense possible, because there's other things you could count towards some of our work, like our coaches for the restorative work. So that's school counselors, school psychologists, mental health supports. A question came up that, again, is not directly in the budget book, and that is, are more staff resignations, are they bringing down our percentages of diverse staff? And what I'll tell you is that every year, and including this year, we're up a bit in our staff diversity numbers. I can show you that. We haven't analyzed for next year yet, but in 2020, 21, this school year, no, we're 21, 22, I'm losing years. We are up across all groups, classified, licensed, and administrators. Some bigger places than others. Yep.
Sorry. When you're moving your papers,
oh, sorry,
it's really hard to hear what you're saying at the same time. Just didn't know if you knew that. So
I don't. Yep. Can't hear myself, so I don't. So thank you. This is hard on the going through the budget book to also not have papers. I need like 8 screens. So thank you for that. Okay. Next thing is I'm going to back up here. I think it's on page, 69, student safety. And multiple questions came up about what's the difference between a campus safety associate and an SRO. So a campus safety associate is more security. They're not they don't have a law enforcement certificate. They're not certified police officers. They don't carry a gun. They can't investigate crime, and therefore also can't make arrests. The campus security associates, yes, they can break up fights. They help students get to class. They build relationships. They do, in a lockdown or something, work on safety in the building. They do try to keep order. But the really big distinction is SRO has a gun, they can arrest, they can investigate criminal. Campus safety associate does none of that. Yes, the SROs, we wanted them to build relationships too, but the campus safety associates their goal is that as well. The thing to remember too is that the campus safety associates, there are more because they're big buildings and they need to be very present in the hallways and watching kids and helping kids get to class and all of that. So know that that's what they do. It is funded here in student safety, 2115 on this page. And we broke that out because it was in with social attendance services in the past, and we broke that out into a clear function. So it was really easy to see within the budget. The other question then came up about behavior specialists. What's the job of a behavior specialist? And the behavior specialists, you won't see them in the budget document because they're licensed. They're like licensed classroom teachers. So they're in the elementary function of 1111. And the behavior specialist, licensed educator, they work on our restorative systems. They work on our PBIS systems. They navigate conflict with kids. They, especially at middle school and high school, will help if there's a discipline that needs to happen where they'll figure out what happened before an administrator needs to issue some sort of discipline. But their goal is different. They're not an administrator, but it's another hands on deck to help students learn. I think some of you have done a couple of visits to some schools where you likely saw the behavior specialist who helped navigate kids to a calming room, a sensory room, especially in that elementary level. They have a lot of contact with teaching the right behavior. And again, same with middle and high school, their job is to help teach, because that's what we want from behavior. Yes, accountability, but also teaching. And then if we can get to the place of restorative work as well. So
Dr. Satya has his hand up.
Okay, let me finish this sentence and I'll go right to him.
Okay.
The question came up though when about the realignment of the behavior specialists are these people. And kind of, but I think the real question was, will people lose their jobs as a result of this realignment? The answer is no. There will be people who apply for these behavior specialist jobs because like right now in elementary, we might only have 0.5 of a behavior specialist in our elementary school. This gets us to a full person in every elementary school, which is really important because they often were either sharing a position or sharing their time with another school. When it becomes just a position at a school, it is an attractive position that people might want to apply for. All right, Dr. Chandragiri.
Thank you very much, Chair Marchbanks and Superintendent Perry. We're talking about this topic of student safety and this behavioral specialist, security specialist, and the different categories. I just want to ask a general question from a risk management point of view. What if there is a situation where with all this, the risk of violence is not mitigated and somebody gets hurt, let's say other students, staff, or something in the community? Is there a litigation mitigation fund, like a risk management fund or an insurance fund that will protect our district or make good for anybody who becomes harmed as a result of this? I know it's an important question, but where does this fit in? Where will that be the category?
We do have a risk fund. It is in the special revenue funds in the back. Let me, in a couple minutes, come back and I'll show you right where that is.
Thank you.
The risk is always there. We are a self-insured school district, so we have a risk fund. And the risk is there for every district, whether there's police officers in the school or not. But I'll show you where that is as soon as I have to grab my other book and grab the page number. Okay, and I'll keep going, but hold that question for the very end. Okay, the next question came up about preschool and the numbers of preschool. So keep in mind that preschools is one of those grants. And we have Preschool Promise, we have Head Start, we have Community Action Head Start. I think those are the main ones. We also have Child Care for our Teen Parent Program. Those are all funded in the large grant funds outside of the Gen Fund. And so Fund 240, Function 1140 is early childhood. Next year, we have set to have 661 preschoolers, given what we know about the grants we've received at this point. Often what happens, and your vice chair will attest to this, is the Early Learning Hub has extra Preschool Promise funding. Salem-Keizer can stand up more classrooms because there's not other providers. So we end up shifting that funding over time. I think the question was directed towards a fee-based program that we did have that we moved away from in the pandemic. But more importantly, I think the question is around how are we going to really elevate language in those preschool programs, because for fee-based programs, that does take away a certain group of our kids and families who need that language program. So we do have our migrant preschool programs. And then Olga is leading with our preschool coordinator, Stephanie, thinking around are we sure we have bilingual teachers in the right places to push into then those dual language kinder programs. And so we do, I think it's about $5.4 million right now that we have for preschool programs. I know we're a K-12 system, but I say we're pre-K through 12. And again, we serve about 661. The numbers have gone down in the pandemic because of the need to have smaller groups of students. Hopefully, I think at one point we were at 800 or 900 students, and hopefully we can get back to that number in the future. Okay, the next question was around TAG programs. And programs for talented and gifted is on page 59 in your book, 60 on the screen. And it is about $630,000 or $631,000. It doesn't have a lot of FTE in there. And we have about 2,000 kids that are identified as talented and gifted. If there were a place I might think we would add, it would be to add another staff member to that office, just like I would also add another program assistant social worker to oversee the social worker workforce. And so both of those are some things on my mind, as well as kids that really need much more intensive programs. Okay. I think charter schools is the next question. I just want to show you where that is listed, because a question came up, why is there more dollars in charter school right now? So charter schools are on page 185. Those are, again, outside of the Gen Fund. The way charter schools work is we get the revenue through the state school fund, and we contractually have a relationship with them, and we then pass revenue to them. We keep the special education services, but they do all the regular education. And two reasons this has increased. You can see the big increase in the resources there. One is we have expansion of enrollment at a couple of our charter schools, and an increase in the state school fund, and a new contractual arrangement with Howard Street going into next year. So that's kind of what's going on with that. Again, great relationships with our charter schools and fund them outside of the Gen Fund. Well, there was the question, 360 right here, charter school payments. That's where it went up. And I think that was Barbara's question. All right, I think, let me look at my questions here. The next question was around Avid. And it was, how much do we spend on Avid? So you'll have to write down the page numbers for this. I'm not going to show them all to you. Avid is one of those programs that's integrated across multiple functions. I think Director Hinos Pressy got to see the results of Avid this weekend at our Avid graduation. And it is really a premier program for us because of the way it helps kids navigate our systems in order to get to graduation and enrolled in college. So we have about $1.5 million for Avid spread across multiple areas. Remember, in the budget message, we added one program associate to really build up the North feeder area for Avid. So that gives us two. So the program people are a coordinator or kind of a director of Avid, and then two licensed educators. But then we pay for tutoring. So Avid tutors are paid. Registration for conferences are paid, professional development is paid, but it's across multiple areas. So 1121, middle school instruction on page 54 has some dollars in Avid. 1131, high school instruction, page 56 has some items in Avid. 1280, alt ed, so our alt ed kids get Avid as well on page 63. Then there's 2110 and 2140, which are the central functions. So middle, high, and alt ed are out to the school dollars. The central functions are an improvement in instruction, 2210, page 75, 2240, page 78, and then 2490, other support services, which is our school administration page. So that's kind of how it's the Gen Fund. Our schools get a lot of grants. For Title, they've had Nike innovation grants for Avid. Some use a little bit of title funding to help with Avid. And then built in is we have Avid classes. So within the general FTE, a school will assign a certain number of FTE to Avid classes so that they are teaching Avid in their schedule. So it's a great question and not a simple answer. Okay, Barbara, did you have another question from that? I think I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I guess my issue with Avid is that there's zero information online. And I've raised this concern directly with the district in the past, calling the main line and even talking to the Avid teachers or the Avid coordinators. There's like nothing clear for parents to look and advocate for their children in Avid. If you Google Salem-Keizer School District website, I really would like that fixed as soon as possible so that people who are interested in it, like North Salem, they can easily access it through the website. And a few months ago when I checked, it was information from like 3 years ago, and it was so difficult for myself to even contact somebody. So if somebody can put on their list to fix that, because the Avid program, my understanding, is helping kids who are hopefully college bound, but might not have that in their background. So this is super important equity, and I find it very disturbing. I can't find that easily on the website. So that's just kind of a side, I guess, comment for if you could please look into that.
I got it.
And I have 1.5 million.
Yep, I got it, and I'll try to put together how we recruit, because I know like middle schools, they go down into elementary for the application process and all that. But we'll get that a little more front and center. So thank you. And it's a side comment, but it's in support of Avid.
Dr. Satya.
Thank you, Chair Marchbanks and Superintendent Perry. In this Avid program budgeted amount, is there any budget amount for the student and their families to go and visit college campus? Or is that included in that? Even if it is the local college in our state nearby, even if they can't travel to another state, at least nearby state, preferably the younger students in the Avid.
Yeah, part of Avid is a college-going culture, and part of a college-going culture is to get students on college campuses. So they built into, so again, there's another place in the budget, is transportation. We take kids on field trips to colleges, and I've seen some of them, but they go to colleges all over the state. And then the other thing through Avid they do is work on FAFSA and college applications. So kids that are in Avid generally have college applications and acceptance into, 3 or 4 different colleges as well.
Superintendent Perry, can I just follow up? Does this include parents also accompanying the students to college campus? Is there a amount like Title I can be used for parent, some kind of parent education part? Does the Avid allow us to take the parents or even teaching them how to start, say, a Gerber account or a college saving account from the beginning itself?
I don't think I have that level of specificity in my answer. I just know it's mainly with kids that they go on these trips.
Thank you.
Yes. I'd like to ask and then state something. The other day, I went to visited Waldo, and Avid students were coming back from a visit to Western Oregon University. They were completely excited and shared just how insightful they were to visit the campus. So I don't believe it's parents would be able to go as well. And what about the program of Juntos out of Oregon State University? Really similar to Avid, but if we were to build a partnership and bringing them into the district, would that have implications on the budget?
I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that, but it is something we could research.
Great.
All right. Director Chandragiri asked about the risk fund. The risk fund is budgeted on page 188, and we are self-insured. We also have insurance we purchase over a certain amount. We have workers' comp claims. We have other liability that we fund all through this risk fund. And so that is where it's budgeted within the budget document. It's just not in the Gen Fund. All right. With that, I am going to pull down my slides and then, well, let me stop there. Let me ask you to open up for questions first before I pull down the slides in the screen share, just in case it's something I need to point you to in the budget book. So, and if you would give us a page number, that would help.
I have a question, Christy.
Okay.
So page number 21 in the budget book, going back to the staffing ratios. You mentioned some really big numbers to reduce, I guess, per child, the cost to reduce the classroom sizes. Would you please include those in that email you're going to send out with all of the other detail on projected student? Those numbers are rather big, and they're actually very important numbers to understand what it really means to actually reduce that. And then I did have a little concern. I noticed, and maybe this is just, if you could include the 2021 numbers and the 2022 numbers, because I noticed there's a jump in the elementary or primary level of 17% to 34%, if I heard that correctly, in the 25 to 29 category, which is going the wrong direction. And then I wonder if included in this are instructional assistants or volunteers, other adults in the classroom to help offset that student teacher ratio. So there's 2 adults to 30 kids or something along those lines.
Yeah, not as the numbers we gave you didn't include any additional adults, but there are additional instructional assistants. So when you look in the budget book under 1111 elementary, there are licensed and there are classified. And when they're in that 1111 instruction, those classified numbers are the numbers that are instructional assistant type numbers. The other place we have classified employees is in special education. So in the least restrictive and the restrictive categories in the budget book, those there's licensed and classified as well. The classified are instructional assistants. We call them special programs assistants in the special ed classrooms.
And we have Barbara.
I guess if we're using this time, I want to go to page 124. Just it looks like the food budget for this year in 3299 proposes 1,500,000. If you look at last year, it was 2,500,000, but only 176,000 was used. Why such a big difference between what's budgeted and what actually is used in that 13299 section for the breakfast program?
Yeah.
Is there a typo?
No. What happened is 2 things have happened. One is in the pandemic, we had some different rules. And I'm going to make sure, I don't know if Sarah will have the answer to this, or we're going to have to check and get back, but I think this is the answer. We had different rules, so we had different ability to feed kids differently. But the state also, a lot of school lunch program is primarily funded by the federal government. And in the last couple legislative sessions, you've seen attention on the school lunches, the school breakfast before the bell, I think is what it was called in the legislative session. So more revenue has come in from those programs than we've ever had in the past. I think there was even a portion of it that was in the Student Success Act for feeding kids. So I think the revenue has been higher.
Levy?
Yeah, 2 questions. One, to add to Lara's question about class size. Could you clarify if the FTE that we're talking about is it instructors, or does it include other adults in the school building, like office staff, things like that?
Yeah, when I'm talking class size and FTE, I'm talking licensed educators, so licensed teachers. Yeah, whenever I give numbers related to class size, I always do the licensed educator to student. Same with counselors. If there was, let's say in the counseling office, there's somebody who helps a counselor that's a classified employee. I don't ever count that classified employee in the counselor to student ratio.
And I think my last question would be, I had submitted a question asking, because of COVID, we hired a lot of nurses, which I think was great, and they did a great job. So my question was, as we're coming out of the pandemic, what's that look like in the budget for this next year?
Thank you, because I had that written down and I missed it. So let me find it. So 2 places. One is we still have a number of nurses, school-based health assistants, and LPNs that are in the Gen Fund. So if you go to page 71, no idea why it's blurry. But in the Gen Fund, we have 17.88 nurses, 1 FTE nursing program assistant that are still in the Gen Fund, 6 licensed LPNs, 19.75 school-based health assistants, and then for about 25 classified total. I'm going to go to my budget book so I can look at it, but it is on, I think it's on page 71. And in ESSER, we have the coordinator, so the coordinator of our district health authority, and 2 nurses, and then 6 LPNs and 23 FTE of school-based health assistants. What we did with school-based health assistants, and I think you'll remember this, Levy, at the elementary level, there was advocacy to get school-based health assistants. So elementary have an hour and a half of school-based health assistants every day. And then during the pandemic, we added 4.5 hours from ESSER. So the 4.5 hours for elementary is still in ESSER for next year. So it's a large cadre of nurses, but not all that many are funded through ESSER. I think really 3 more total for nursing. And the number of nurses, and you'll probably remember this as well, there was some advocacy a number of years ago in the budget process around an increase in nurses. And the nursing cadre right now, if I remember correctly, has at least 1 nurse in every high school, plus then spread out through the feeder area, which we just didn't have before. And we really have a lot more kids than ever with medical needs at school, including, diabetic and insulin and all of that.
Laura, is your hand up?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank you. So I just had one other follow-up question regarding inflation and potentially going back to the board to amend the budget. What's that process like? What's the trigger that then says, hey, we need to go back and ask for a change?
Yeah, it's an amount of appropriation. So if we say, I can't remember if it's 10%, but if we have to overexpend the large category appropriation by a certain amount, that triggers the supplemental budget process. We did it this year because we had not finished with bargaining at the time of the approved budget and adopted budget, and we had also not approved. We didn't have a finalized state school fund. So because of we budgeted 0 cost of living, 0 insurance. Once we finalized bargaining, that increased our expenditures. So we went back to the board with a supplemental budget process to clean that up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Satya.
Thank you, Chair Marchbanks and Superintendent Perry. You did I missed, or maybe you covered it. You had allocated like $10 million for textbooks this time. So will that cover enough so that all our students, including middle and high school students and elementary school students, will have access to textbook, either in print version or electronic license for that, so that, from an equity point of view, they can at least carry home one and their parents can sit and help them, or somebody else can help them, because that became a challenge during the pandemic, where our teachers had to sit and translate some of the books in English to Spanish or whatever it is.
So textbooks are a really expensive answer, and textbooks that are fully updated is the question, because we have out-of-date textbooks. So the answer is no. 10 million isn't enough if we want every student to be able to carry a textbook home for every subject every day. And I don't know what the number is. It's probably a really big number. I think 10 million is a really good start. We invested a lot in the Chromebooks for access, so that any of those online and open source materials would be available for our families. We have plenty of Chromebooks for one-to-one. We are worried a little bit about Chromebooks in our homes and what kids are accessing. That's a whole different subject, but just something that's on my mind. So short answer is no. I got to stop sharing for a minute. This is making me, I got to see people.
So this is just a follow-up on that. With all the challenges our children have gone through, from an equity point of view, if you look at it from an equity lens, because some of our students will need a little extra time with the books or material to self-study or catch up, if they're not primarily English speaking and things like that. So what can we do so that they have access to textbooks or access to even a subscription, copyrighted subscription, so that they can study at their own pace or somebody can help them from their neighbors or family? Because classroom instruction is one thing, but some of them will take a little longer to sit and study and at their own pace and practice multiple times in order to be proficient. So how can we use the equity lens so that they have access to educational materials like textbook or even a copyrighted license that they can download it and families can help them, or after school mentoring program can help them, or tutoring can help them?
Well, hopefully if kids need that, we're doing that already. I think, and I don't think we'll be perfect in every case. Even if you think about our summer programs and our credit recovery, that's the place we give additional support for learning, and kids are packing home books all of the time for that. Again, I think one of your questions was around, at one point was around parents having access to a book they could keep at home. We don't have duplicate copies. So I don't know if I'm really answering your question, but I'm trying my best to say that's an important topic.
Can different libraries in schools have enough extra copies that they can borrow and read? My goal is that some of our students who are not primarily English speaking need a little extra time to kind of process and read and figure it out, or maybe have to review it multiple times in order to kind of practice and be proficient. That's what I found it in the beginning. So can every school library have enough extra copies of textbooks that maybe they can borrow it? They may not have to hold on to it, and then other students can borrow it for a week or two. But the goal is, can every student have, at least for some time, a book that they can take it home where their neighbors or parents or somebody can sit with them and kind of go through? Because my question, they're just left to only classroom time. And if the language is not the primary one, it becomes so difficult, Superintendent Perry.
Yeah. I think there's lots of places our kids take their textbooks home all the time. In fact, we have lots of them that every year are checked back in, and lots that are lost. So I already know there's this whole check-in, check-out procedure. So I'd have to understand the specific example of the gap you're sharing, because we have all kinds of textbooks. We have a checkout system for them. Kids take them home for the year or the semester, depending on course length. And if a student was still working to get their credits, they would still have their textbook. So I don't understand the specific gap. So if you could think of an example of where it's not happening in a school, that would help.
Well, I can't think of a specific example, but some parents have told me that they would appreciate if they could have a copy of the textbook which they can sit at home and review with the student, whether it is science, math, English, or social studies, or whatever other subject is. Because that is where they're saying, because these books, I'm not sure if are they expensive if they buy it. Some of them are pretty expensive for they buy it. But they would like a copy of the syllabus and the curriculum and the book, which they can use it to support their student. That's what parents have brought it to my attention. Even we experienced when we were raising our children in Salem-Keizer School District.
So I would say direct parents to the school as the first step in that, because that's exactly what they could ask from a teacher. And then if there's not, then there really is a gap because we haven't spent the money, then we could deal with that on a class by class basis.
Superintendent Perry, I wanted to go to, in the physical copy of the board book, it's page 102. So I don't know on the digital copy, probably like 103. But under 2120 guidance services, is that all what we call counselors?
It is what we call counselors. Yep. That's school counselors. One of the things you'll notice in the budget book is that there's lots of outdated language. And so the things that they're called don't make sense because we are required to name the category exactly like ODE asks us to name the category. So that's school counselors.
Okay. So then, so just on that page, I see like we've got 114 school counselors, the 26.75 social work services, and then on the next page, 103, which I guess would be 104 on the digital copy, we've got psychological services, 11 FTE. So are those in school like psychiatrists, or is that like, how does that work?
Yeah, school psychologists, they're in a couple places. They help with some of our preventative systems like our suicide, although I think that's a social worker, some of our threat assessment systems and things like that. They also help with testing and evaluation, and then do some direct service to kids. So they're a district centralized function and dispatched out to schools.
Oh, okay. So like if a school is like, I need access to a psychologist, like somebody can come out, but they're not like permanently within the schools.
Correct. Yeah. Permanent within the schools are the school counselor, the social worker, and then those mental health partnerships where we have mental health private partners that come in.
And then my last question on this like section, and I'll open it up for other folks, is so again on page 102, or I guess 103 on the digital copy, in the student safety where we increased 11 FTE, and then I see a little asterisk where it says that like, so of the 66 student safety, 45 of those are the campus safety associates, and 21 and at 0.50 are crossing guards. I know that I've definitely heard in the community like the need for crossing guards, especially like in certain areas of town. So I just kind of wanted to uplift as like, I don't know, as kind of like out of base as it might sound to some folks, just because like, with the partnership with the COG that we have with the Safe Routes to School, like that makes me really excited. And I'm just wondering if like, maybe I could find out how many crossing guards we have and how many crossing guards we're hoping to have.
Yeah, I will get that for you. And here's also how it works with how we and we'll assign more if we need to, even if it becomes a budget add. But we will get a request in and we'll send a team out to evaluate the site. To see. And you see them out on Market Street and everywhere. But I can get numbers of crossing guards. It'll be by FTE. So because they work little chunks. So they'll be like a 2-hour, but we might have 20 FTE, but it's 50 people. But I'll get you both of those.
Thank you.
Barbara?
Thank you. I had a question about buses again. I remember the chariots, I don't remember where we heard it, that some of them are hybrid. Did we talk about this with the school buses? Are some of them going to be hybrid?
So I don't think we did, but you may have picked it up from a budget or board meeting or something. But we do have, we've started getting a couple electric buses, and we get some grants. We've got a couple grants from PGE, and we're also watching, there's another large federal grant coming out. So we're starting down that alternative fuel path. There's also dollars from a Volkswagen settlement for clean buses that's part of the replacement to get newer buses. And so I don't have all the details on the top of my head, but we're going down that path. And the Gaffin Road facility has a much larger number of electrical charging stations. So we're prepped with infrastructure for that. And I think our first electric buses are out on the road at this point.
Is the school switching or shifting a little bit to have maybe some committees to talk about how to bring more green energy, like solar panels, getting some money from the feds to do that, or also food waste? That's a big thing that I noticed pre-pandemic, I would go visit the kids at the cafeteria, and I noticed a lot of the food just go to waste, where I wish it could get packed up to go back home if needed. So I'm wondering if that's something that, not necessarily for this budget, but we can start looking forward to maybe some greener options for our schools.
Yeah, I think that's well within the conversations we should be having at this point. And we had started down the path on some of those pre-pandemic, and we also have to navigate some of the rules around the National School Lunch Program and being able to pack up food and send it home. But I will also put that on our conversation with Sodexo. We have a internal employee who's helped managing that work. And, like right now, we've tasked him to do some focus groups with our Islander students around lunch menus. And so this will be another task that we could ask him to begin thinking about with our food contractor, Sodexo, as one area, but then thinking other areas as well.
Do you ever go directly to the folks who serve the food and ask them what their opinion and their take on what should they consider should be done? I just wonder if sometimes we look at it from up here, but then the people with the boots on the ground have maybe some better ideas than we might consider.
I don't have an answer off the top because part of the up here is federal rules, but I don't know where the wiggle room is in the federal rules, especially related to packing up and sending food that's already been served home. All doable. I just don't have great answers right now.
The district's doing so many good things. It just keeps wanting to do more and more and more. So I appreciate it.
It's awesome. It's how we should be pushed. It's all good.
Lisa.
Yes, thank you so much. A question about summer school. It's mentioned in the budget and under 1,400 in the program area, but I'm curious if with the funding coming down over the summer, if that's included in this budget, or is that under separate contract, or how is that really articulated in the budget?
Yeah, great question. We got the numbers for summer learning after we developed the budget document. There's still enough room in that large grants fund to accept the revenue and expend it. So I don't think we'll need a supplemental budget, but two major grants have come at us since we had the budget document. One is the summer learning, and the second one is the recruitment and retention grant. And again, I think we'll have plenty of room to do what we need to do. But if we need to alter the budget document, we'll come back between approval and adoption, or after adoption, a supplemental budget process. And both of those, I think the recruitment and retention also is funded outside the Gen Fund, but I'm not 100% sure on those.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Dr. Satya.
Thank you, Chair Marchbanks. Superintendent Perry, with regard to little children who are entering kindergarten, before we used to call kindergarten readiness, now we are calling it like socio-emotional state, right? Is there any budget that we have set aside to work on incorporating Rise Up Oregon action plan so that we can start helping these children way before they come to our kindergarten, working with early learning hubs, because that is also helpful so that they're a little bit ready by the time they are in third grade to do what they are supposed to do academically. And, so is there any budget set aside for some kind of cross-sector collaborative work with the local CCO or early learning hubs, pediatricians, OBGYN, and getting these kids ready? And the second part to that question is, children who are multilingual or from diverse communities, often their acceptance rate for this early learning program is there is not equal. There is some kind of disparity I see in various parts of our state. Is there any plan we have set aside to kind of intentionally recruit more and have some kind of cross-discipline collaborative we start working to build?
So we probably have one of the premier programs in the state for our early learning kids and our partnership. And I think grant funds are in the $5.4 million. We're serving over 600 students. We also serve students in migrant preschool programs. And we work closely with the Marion and Polk Early Learning Hub, because there's also grants that help recruit kids into our preschool programs. We have a very robust navigation system where if a student comes in, a family comes in, and Lisa, who helps with us, knows that there's a program over here that's full, they send it over here, we put them in our program. She doesn't let a dollar go unspent, and neither does our preschool coordinator. So pretty robust. Are there greater areas for intersectionality? Probably, but we sit at the table with collaborative partners through the Marion and Polk Early Learning Hub.
So are we going to set aside some money to invest on the state's Rise Up Oregon plan so that by 23-24 we get ready to take one of their goals and start working in collaborative way? Because the goal is, I think they're moving away and trying to get these kids engaged sooner and sooner before they come to us. Are we going to be working with others? And if there is any dollar we are setting aside, because often, or is it going to be only grant based?
Well, we do have a little bit of early learning dollars in the Gen Fund because there are sometimes things for our littlest kids that can't be funded through grants. But I don't know if you're talking like you think we need a full position. I don't quite know. I just know we have a robust system, and I'm not quite exactly sure what the ad would be.
So my question is, we often wait till the kids come to us. Is there any way we can go to the kids way before they come to us using Lisa's program and our schools, and so that we can start identifying children sooner, so that by the time they come to us, we are in a better position to get them ready? That's a
Yep, we do. We go out to schools. We work with our ESD around early intervention services. When our ESD doesn't do it quick enough, we go to them and say, we need you to do it quicker. We go to homes, we go to pick people up, we recruit like crazy. We try to also support our culturally responsive preschool programs as well. The coalition has some preschool programs, and there's a couple other amazing providers in our community. And as a district, we believe it's our job to support and assist as part of one place, one group in the system that we all work together. And Lisa, I'm going to punt to you. Did I miss anything? I know we also have our partnership grants as well.
Right. So we have several grants that we work in the community with various community partners to provide things like parent education. There we're identifying kids and helping to support families in referral to services. We've got Ready for Kindergarten. We also, as Christy mentioned, doing a whole lot of work in the community around meeting the social emotional needs of kids earlier, whether that's through early intervention or ECSC, or that's through some other preschool or other childcare programs. We also have a really strong collaboration between Salem-Keizer's early childhood programs and area childcare providers, and doing a lot of training and connecting them in with the schools earlier, as well, with great partnerships between other preschools that are in other feeder areas inside the boundary. So I always can do more, but I would say that the partnerships are very strong.
Thank you.
And I would also add there's many other culturally specific programs too. I'm looking here at Levy. Mano a Mano's got a great program, the Coalition. I mean, there's quite a bit happening in the community.
The reason I asked this question is, I think if I'm right, last year or the year before, we had more slots than the number of children. So a lot of them didn't go filled. So we had a little bit of less number of children coming, yet we had more openings, if I'm correct in remembering that. So is there something that we can do a little sooner so that more kids can avail this? The idea is to get universal child, the preschool kind of intervention. How can we kind of make it? That's a goal where we can partner. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Superintendent Perry.
Are there any additional questions from committee members regarding the budget or discussions? Okay. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to move to our next meeting, right? Our next meeting is, yes, Christy?
Yeah. Let's talk about public. It's all good. Christy's great. Let's talk about public comment for a minute.
Okay.
So we did not have any sign up for public comment for tonight. We did open it and closed at the normal times. Public comment for next time, we're doing it just a teeny bit different, but we're opening at 8:00 on Thursday morning, and then we'll close it at 8:00 on Monday morning. That gives people from Thursday to Monday morning to sign up. And then once we get the full sign up of people, I'll work with Lisa and Oni to say, how much are we going to hear Monday night? And do we need to also spill public comment over into Tuesday night? So we'll take the whole body of public comment and decide how much and how much each night to listen to based on how many people sign up. We had a number of contact the budget committee emails come in this afternoon, maybe one last night. What we'll do is we'll bundle all of those up and send them to you, so you have anything anyone's written to you, especially within the last 48 hours, that will come to you. Just, that's not public comment, it's just written comment to the budget committee that will get to you as well. So we've got that. Again, opens up Thursday at 8, closes Monday morning at 8. Next week, we'll, and you can start tonight if you want to do some deliberations about the budget. If you want to spend a little time discussing things as a committee, this would be a great time to do it. Or we can move on to next budget committee meeting. So thank you.
Okay, so our next meeting is Monday. Budget committee meeting is Monday the 23rd. It's open for public comment and deliberations on the proposed budget until approved or recommended to the school board for adoption. And then the meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday, May 24th and 25th, they're tentative meetings, and they'll only occur if the budget is not approved on May 23rd. Public comment may or may not be received. Deliberations on proposed budget until approved or recommended to the school for adoption. We will have additional meetings if necessary, if we can't come to get it approved or recommended to school board for adoption by May 25th. And meeting dates and times and agendas and information about opportunities, avenues for public comment will be posted on the district website. Thank you, everyone. This meeting, it is 7:41, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
For more videos and information, go to capitalcommunitymedia.org and follow us on social media.